Hello, it's Sammy here, and today for this match review, I'm delighted to be joined by John Shin. You must have seen him from Full Time Devils and his own channel, John Shin, which is you can be free to subscribe to. It will be in the link in the description below. We're here to review United versus Sheffield United, and we won 3-0 courtesy of a Martial hat trick, the first hat trick in the Premier League since Robin van Persie. Premier League's back. It's back at Old Trafford. How happy were you to see that?
I was excited, but given this whole pandemic issue, I've been very careful about how I react to the Premier League and football returning in general. Of course, it's exciting and delightful that we finally have something else to do besides sitting at home all day. But I was cautiously optimistic about the game. Obviously, returning to Old Trafford was an emotional moment for all of us United fans. So I literally tweeted out the words "cautiously optimistic," and look, it paid its reward. We had a great game. It was a nice return. Man United, not a completely dominating performance, but overall, I felt like it was an exciting match to watch. Obviously, we still have lots of work to be done, but more positives, lot more positives, and I don't even think there was a negative to be had. If I had to be critical, maybe one or two, but yeah, it was an overall good vibe, enjoyable moment for all of us.
And that's now 13 games unbeaten. Obviously, most of them coming back before the lockdown. 10 clean sheets, and I think it's about 33 goals scored. So we're clearly getting into some sort of rhythm. Obviously, that's coincided with Bruno Fernandes signing, and I think Nemanja Matic as well been a huge part in that. And of course, now we've got Paul Pogba back. Seeing all of those players, were you ever worried that they wouldn't gel together?
No, I think, people may know, for those who don't know, I've been a huge advocate for Paul Pogba.
Hmm.
He's one of my favorite players. Given his flaws and his imperfections, not everybody's perfect. And while you can always say that Paul Pogba hasn't handled his situation with respect to his relationship with his manager, with his relationship to the club, with his relationship to his agent, his brothers. While things like that haven't been really clear for us fans to see, I've always felt like his heart was in the right place and his intentions were pure. And when Manchester United were capitulating and really just completely toxic all around with respect to Ed Woodward and
Hmm.
Jose Mourinho and all that things, I felt like he was just bearing the brunt of the force, the impact, the pressure. And while he was returning, his first performance, while it was a substitute match, you could see that he wanted to ease himself in, and you can see that his demeanor is slowly starting to change. Obviously, that's just me, and I have these wild takes, and I like to make
No,
assumptions
yeah.
here and there, but he seemed different today. You could tell that there wasn't a lot of pressure about him. I felt like he really started to feel like he's more not the star player, but more the mature player, which comes first. And I'm slowly starting to see that. Obviously, it was his first full match, if you will, since the restart. So I wasn't really concerned, to answer your question. I wasn't really too concerned with respect to the potential for them to gel. I always feel like if you're a quality player and you have the ability to be able to play as a team, if you're not a one man show kind of guy, I felt like that really isn't the biggest issue. We've seen players like uh, Adel Tarab, perfect example. Somebody of a player with quality, but really just can't play with his team because of his showboating and his just individualistic style of play. Paul Pogba was
Hmm.
not that kind of guy. Yes, he has the flair to be able to play in that manner, but he's not that kind of guy. And he showed me today that given time, given the right management, I think he could really gel really well with players around him, like Bruno Fernandes, obviously the name in question. But yeah, not bothered at all.
And today, as I mentioned, Martial got his hat trick, and I think there's been quite a lot of criticism towards Martial to do with his movement and maybe his pressing, and he hasn't maybe applied himself in the way that United fans wanted him to. But he showed today why he is such a and good player, but also why he does fit the system that Ollie was trying to build around him. Because United fans have always said upgrade on the striker, but I've always been one to say that there's always been other priorities other than striker. I think we can look to that later and maybe try and get when it comes to the time maybe someone like Haaland in. But today, what were your thoughts on Martial? Because I think he looked just up for it, and you saw when he came on after hat trick how delighted he was with his performance.
Look, another wild take that I always say is that I'm not the biggest fan of Martial. I mean, I like the player. I
Hmm.
think he's a quality player, but he still hasn't really won my heart yet. To
Yeah.
to to speak in layman terms, I just think he still has a little bit more work to do, as does many of those players on that pitch. I'm not just singling out Martial. I think a lot of the players, including Rashford, still have a lot of work cut out for them. That being said, I think today was a very important game for his career in general. I mean, it was the first Premier League hat trick for Manchester United since Van Persie's hat trick against Aston Villa. That's a wild, wild stat.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, we're showing improvements. And somebody like Martial, who again, like I said, still has a little bit more work cut out for him, for the fact that he's able to score a hat trick. And besides the hat trick, he had a good performance. I think he linked up very well.
Yeah.
There was a bit of a miscommunication with him and Paul Pogba in the box when Paul Pogba had just a wonderful run into the box. But
Hmm.
given the run of play and the intensity, of course, there was more chance that there was going to be miscommunication. But other than that, I think his team play is improving, his movements is improving. I think he still has a lot of work to do in terms of understanding where he needs to be as a 9, not just as a 9, but as a 9 in this system, in this Man United system under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. But other than that, I'm liking it. He's blossoming. He's continuing to grow. I completely agree with you, Sammy. I don't think the striker position is somewhere that we really need to improve on first. Look, we can get improvements anywhere across the pitch, but that's definitely not priority. I think priority lies somewhere like maybe the right side of the right side of the front three. I think we need a
Hmm.
right-sided player, like a solid right-sided player, somebody that can like really solidify that role. I think that takes precedence. I also think we wouldn't mind upgrading on the left back role. I also think maybe we wouldn't mind adding to the midfield number. Maybe one more midfielder might do the trick. But other than that, it was a good performance from Martial. Really liking what I saw today, and hopefully he continues to grow in that fashion.
And going by the game goal by goal, the first goal came from Rashford putting it across the box to Martial, and we've been seeing that one of the criticisms of Martial is that he probably doesn't get those, what Ollie mentioned it as, like those scruffy goals, the goals that the typical striker goals, and he did get that, and it's good movement. And that link up between Rashford and Martial, we saw it for the third goal as well, really is been blossoming all season, to be fair.
But look, yeah, it was like the two goals was some people might call it a tap-in, but look, it takes a lot of quality. It's especially in that first goal. The pace of that
Hmm.
cross from Rashford was a
Yeah.
very, very low, powerful drive. You need to be able to really open your body extremely fast and to be able to put your foot in that right position. It's not as easy as it looks. Martial obviously has the quality to be able to do that. He does have the acrobatic aspect of his playing style, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, I think if we look back, especially in the last game, now that there's no fans there, we can really hear what the players and the coaches are speaking on the pitch. And one of the things that I recall vividly was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was screaming at Martial to get in the box, and that's one
Hmm.
of those things that Martial doesn't really like doing, or if it's not really part of his playing style, if you will. And today we saw that he was very involved in the box quite often. He was looking for runs between the channels. He was trying to pick those passes. He was trying to look for those passes that Bruno and Pogba were trying to pick through the channels, which was very, very nice to see. But where was I going with this? But basically, what I'm trying to say is that Martial was looking better today, and the first goal was really good. The second, third goal, all great goals. But other than that, I thought I was more. I'm trying to not go off on a tangent, but I was more not disappointed, but I was more accepting and like understanding that my feelings with respect to how Rashford and Martial aren't complete is true. Like you saw
Yeah.
that before the goal, you saw Rashford. Like it was just a yes, given the fact that it was also again difficult for Rashford to open up his space and finish that goal. But God, he
Should
needed
be
to finish
finishing
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, he should be finishing that. And like these imperfections are just another reason for me, and it's convincing me that they're not quite ready yet.
Yeah, I agree with you there because there's still like a obvious like rawness to both of their games.
That's right.
I think Rashford, there's obviously the direct pace and the skill, but Martial is a bit more polished. But I feel there is parts of their game that they improve. Like I feel Martial should probably apply Rashford's almost like direct attitude to his game, and Rashford still has like just polish his all-round game up because it's still there's still a rawness to be had there. But the second goal came from Aaron Wan-Bissaka drilling it across the box. Obviously, that the sort of striker's finish from Martial, and we've seen Wan-Bissaka just improving going forward the whole season. He's not there yet. Like going forward, there is still adjustments to be made, but for him to be probably the only right-handed, right-sided player there. That whole game, he's the only really right-sided forward, if you like. And to him getting assists, it's big for him because that's the main criticism of him. No criticism of him going back because we know he's one of the best going back. So seeing him getting assists and going forward and playing with some sort of confidence going forward is good to see.
For sure, I completely agree with you there. I was actually speaking to one of my friends who we were kind of tuning into the game together, and we
Hmm.
were talking about how invisible that left side seemed without Rashford. I mean, Rashford
Yeah.
obviously supplying a lot and working his ass off, but Luke Shaw found it very difficult to get involved forward wise. You know, yes, he was making the
Mm.
overlapping runs,
Yeah.
and yes, he was he's providing a passing option for the left flank, if you will, but he didn't really seem to be a direct threat in terms of the way we were penetrating going forward. You know, we had lightning counterattack opportunities, and we didn't really see that on the left side as opposed to the right side where we had Greenwood and Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Greenwood didn't really. He had a good game, but he didn't really seem as effective or lethal, if you will, in that final third. He was looking for shots that were somewhat difficult. You could see players around him getting slightly frustrated towards the end. You could see Bruno like throwing his hands up, like, "Come on, bro! Like, there's a pass option for you." You could see I think you used a great word there earlier, Sammy, rawness in Greenwood's
Hmm.
approach as well. But Aaron Wan-Bissaka is slowly refining his game, and I love that
Yeah.
about today. You know, not only the defensive contribution, but constantly adding to the forward approach, not just the simple overlap or not just the passing option, but adding a different level of lethality that we've really not seen when he first joined Manchester United, and he's building and developing that game, which is exciting to see because he can tackle anything. He can tackle
Yeah.
a truck, if you will. He can win a
Yeah.
ball off of anything. And to see him also provide an attacking option and an attacking outlet is fantastic to see. And I think that was one of the most positive contributions all game for me.
I think you touched on a good point as well because the Luke Shaw, if I don't want to be overly critical because it's a 3-0 win and the second game back, so you understand if there's weaknesses or deficiencies in anyone's game. But Luke Shaw, I feel going forward, I felt there was opportunities for him to get down that line because he's an inverted fullback. He likes to tuck in, he likes to pass inwards. But we've got Rashford who likes to cut in and is really effective at doing so. So for the next game, I'd personally like to see Brandon Williams get a chance at that left back role because there is obviously, we've said the word rawness to Brandon Williams' game, and going back, it's probably not as good as Luke Shaw, but going forward, he adds like a massive threat, and you can tell. I feel with Brandon Williams and Rashford, I feel there's a bit more of a relationship forming instead of Luke Shaw and Rashford. I don't know if that's maybe just me seeing it, but I'd like to see what I'd like to hear what your thoughts on maybe Brandon Williams coming in instead of Luke Shaw would be for the next game.
Um, I am still not fully sold on Luke Shaw being pulled out of the team just quite yet. I feel like
Hmm.
as well as much as Brandon Williams possesses the initial potential quality,
Yeah.
I just think throwing him into a Premier League game is just he's had appearances, he's had starts, but I just think Luke Shaw still deserves a little bit more time. You know, he didn't have the
Hmm.
worst game today. Granted, Sheffield, I feel like didn't really provide much in terms of an attacking intent.
Yeah.
However, I want to add that when Sheffield did attack, there were so many times where they were overloading that Luke Shaw side. There were
Hmm.
2-3 numbers always outnumbering Luke Shaw, and he did have a difficult game on his hand. And I felt like, you know, like you said, to be I don't want to be too harsh or too critical, but I felt like he had a decent game defensively, just didn't provide anything offensively. But other than
Yeah.
that, you know, as much as I agree in that Brandon Williams deserves an opportunity, I just don't think not quite yet.
Yeah.
Luke Shaw almost reminds me of Wayne Rooney in terms of the
Hmm.
physique, in terms of the
The
figure.
physique. Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
the stockiness of it. Wayne Rooney, every time he came back from an injury, he needed 1, 2, 3, even 4 games to really
To get
find
back
that
into.
rhythm
Yeah.
and to get back
Hmm.
into fitness. Luke Shaw has also had that similar problem, and he really peaked with his time when he shared the pitch with Memphis, and that was
Yeah.
because he was, you know, fit for a very long time. He was getting
Hmm.
consistency of games. Um, we can't use the same excuse all the time. We can't keep saying Luke Shaw needs to get fit. Luke Shaw needs time, and we can't use that. And I agree in that sense that Brandon Williams should start. But
Hmm.
I think Brandon Williams deserves to get substituted in if that's the case. I think if we have 5 substitutes, I know that, we're obviously still returning. It's only the second game. But if we can find opportunities for Brandon Williams to get involved, we definitely should explore that opportunity.
And for the next game, of course, we're playing Norwich in the FA Cup. What you're probably going to see a bit more of a rotated side. You're going to see people like Brandon Williams probably coming in. How confident are you about that game? Because we should be getting through that and going far in the FA Cup this season.
Sure. I'd like to agree. To be honest, like, I haven't watched many football matches this entire season. I've been very busy, so I'm not really sure how Norwich are, especially with respect to their form. But I'm not as fully convinced. I was fooling around in the Full Time Devils podcast. We were talking, and they were like, John's always the positive guy. Who do you think the score is going to be against Spurs? And I was like, oh, we're going to win 3-0. That was obviously as a form of banter, if you will. But I'm not fully convinced that we have the strength or the quality to continue to progress. I'm convinced that we have the right quality to win against Norwich, but I'm still not fully convinced. Like today, when we had the 5 substitutes come in, we had about maybe 10 minutes, maybe just shy of 15 for these 5 substitutes to come in to show what we can to see what they can show. You can clearly see the the lack in quality, the difference in quality, the level. There you go, the level in quality. You're comparing Bruno, Pogba, and all these players, and you switch that, and you have Pereira come in, Daniel James come in, McTominay coming in. Obviously, I'm not saying that they had a horrible performance in 10-15 minutes, but you can tell there's a level in quality, the ideas, the extra layer of dimension that comes in an attacking sense from the likes of Pogba and Fernandes. So I'm not fully convinced in the quality, but I think we should be able to progress. I think Norwich is a game we should be winning on paper.
John, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming onto the channel. Remember, people, to subscribe to John's channel, which we're in the link in the description below. Remember to follow him on Twitter. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I wanted to appreciate you reaching out to me. I always love having conversations with fellow United fans and fellow football fans in general. We're living in hard times, and if there's any way for me to help or contribute or just have a nice conversation, I'm more than happy to do it.
100%. And again, thank you for coming onto the channel. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and see you.